Welcome back to another episode of the Cross Chop. That is John Owning of PFF. I'm Nick Harris of the Full War Star Telegram. We are chopping it up today, and I messed up getting the correct slide up. There we go. Director Caden set this all up for us. Shout out to Director Caden. We're ready to chop it up following the Cowboys' loss to the Lions last Thursday night. John, man, I know we both had a lot of anticipation coming into this game because it was it was one that definitely felt winnable, especially coming out of the previous 3 games coming out of the bye week. Cowboys felt like they were hitting their stride at the right time, but you just hoped one man didn't take them down in Jahmyr Gibbs. It felt like that one man really did take them down. Not necessarily statistically. I mean, he had over 100 total yards, but overall this game, and you talk about Jahmyr Gibbs' impact, and you talk about how this Lions offense was just able to get whatever they wanted to go. It worked for them, and Cowboys lose 44-30.
We got flused. The influenza was going around everywhere on Thursday. It was unfortunate. The defense, kind of cratered back into what it was. And the offense just wasn't enough to be able to overcome the defense's issues. It was really, the table was set with all the injuries that the Lions were dealing with and everything, that it was setting up for the Cowboys to have a real shot to win. And they did have a real shot to win if they could play any semblance of competent defense, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I think the unfortunate thing is not many players played up to their potential. Ryan Flinoy played well. I think Dak played well, all things considered. I thought CD, yeah, of course, CD was great until the concussion. I thought Quinnen Williams was really good on defense. And that's about it. That's every week. He's awesome. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, he's great because if he misses one field goal, everybody's like, what happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're going to start off. We're going to start off talking about this defense, but the question I do want to come out of the gates with for you, John. Yes, the defense had issues. How much of the defensive issues do you credit to Detroit having their average starting field position at the 44-yard line and the kickoff coverage team giving up the 4th most kickoff return yards in the last decade in an NFL game?
Meh. It matters because obviously short field matters a lot, but just everything was just way too easy for the Lions. I was on a conference call with Seth Galina and stuff, talking to the Sunday Night Football crew ahead of the Vikings-Cowboys game next week. And Seth brought up a really good point from his film review of the thing, and it kind of echoes what I was saying, but he put it so much more simply, and it just blew my mind that I hadn't said it that easily. Everything is just so easy for the opposing team's passing game. Just all of the free releases that get off the line of scrimmage. And the biggest detail that you can tell that the Cowboys personnel does not fit this scheme is when they're playing that off-zone coverage, that where you see them backpedal, they start backpedaling immediately. You're not, when you're playing that type of off-zone coverage, you're not supposed to backpedal immediately and give the cushion and make these really easy completions, these really easy short to intermediate completions that teams have been, killing Cowboys with the entire season. But it's because they're not comfortable. When the receivers release off the line of scrimmage and begin their stem, the corners are just retreating immediately. And it just makes, once they get to the break point, it's so easy for them just to break it off, speed cut, and they're wide open. You saw Amon-Ra St. Brown do it a few times. You saw a few other guys be able to do it. It's just, I think it was just, this game in particular was just example A of why Flus cannot be the defensive coordinator moving forward for this defense if you want it to reach its potential, because he is so stubborn that he'll make little tinkers, like he'll add a little, we're going to play some 5-man fronts. We're going to increase a little bit of man coverage. The man coverage from the first, before Quinnen Williams was brought into now, since Quinnen's been on the team, there's a 5% difference in the rate that they're playing man coverage. That's nothing. That you're not going to make any substantial difference doing that. I feel like all you're doing is just trying to check a box. Like, see, we're playing more man coverage. I'm making differences, blah, blah, blah. And then they get beat on one of the man coverage things. It's like, see, we can't play man. We can't do man. Well, it's like, yeah, you can't. When you're doing it 15% of the time, one of every 8 snaps, they can't get into a rhythm, can't get into any type of semblance of rhythm running man coverage. It's just not going to be consistent, and it's not going to be effective. It just blows my mind, and then we see the stuff that they're saying about Kenneth Murray coming out, that they really like his physicality. Well, I can pull you up 10 to 15 snaps where his physicality is god awful, where he's walking out of bounds instead of trying to take on a block, where he's not filling his hole. He has stage fright. He's like watching paint dry, just staring at the hole, watching the running back come, watching the blocker come and getting blocked and just toodles to the running back. It's just makes no sense. And unfortunately, because Kenneth Murray's playing so poorly, you can't trust Maris Lewifau or Shamar James to play consistently. You have so much on the plate of a guy like DeMarvion Overshown that he's not being able to play to his potential, not only because he's coming off an injury, but because he has to do everything. There are so many plays where he's pushing Kenneth Murray over to get to the right hole. He's telling him to fall back because Kenneth Murray fucking reads offensive plays like it's a sundial. It completely cemented in my head that Flus cannot be the defensive coordinator moving forward. I don't care about continuity. Get someone in here who is willing to curtail the scheme to fit the personnel that you have. Because if you want to get the personnel to fit the scheme that Eberflus has, you're going to have to totally wipe the slate clean of the back seven. Totally wipe it clean and start anew. Maybe DeMarvion Overshown is the only guy that you can keep. But everybody else, you're going to have to bring in new people because this is just not what they do correctly. And you're going to continue to have these poor results. And even when the Cowboys were getting better results, what did they do? They beat the Raiders, who are probably the worst team in the NFL. Them and the Titans, awful. Against the Chiefs, they didn't play that well on defense. They made some timely stops at times, but you still gave up 28 points. And then the Eagles, you gave up 21 points in the first half and you played well in the second half. But as we're seeing with the Eagles offense, they're pretty crappy right now.
That's the most points the Eagles have scored in like the last 5 games.
So it's like even Flus's good parts aren't even like his positive moments in the season aren't even that positive when you look at it for like the entirety of the season and how those teams are playing against other teams. It's unbelievable to me that they can sit here with a straight face and tell us we need Flus back for continuity or Kenneth Murray's going to be on the field because of his physicality, blah, 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 blah. Don't treat me like I'm a dumbass, man.
I think one thing that you could expect this week is more Logan Wilson snaps in the place of Kenneth Murray.
I would hope so.
You would hope so, absolutely. You would hope that would have happened 3 weeks ago, but I think that's finally starting to rear around and come to a head. Now we'll see how that ends up translating on the field on Sunday. It's you would hope that it's in situations where Logan Wilson will have a little bit more expertise than Kenneth Murray, but I'm with you. There's been a lot of trust that even the trust that I built back with the defensive scheme has already been eradicated in one game because of what we've seen with Kenneth Murray specifically. And I'm with you 100%, John. It's something that he can't be on the field. He can't. And I understand it from a communication standpoint, but like we mentioned on the show last week, they are grooming DeMarvion Overshown to eventually take over these green dot responsibilities, whether that's this week or in the next couple of weeks. That's going to happen. And so it could be leading toward a reality where Kenneth Murray is off the field. But, they've done it with just about every other position group.
On offense,
player has not been playing well. Yeah, if there's a player not playing well, he's out of there. Kyer Elam is no longer on this team. Luke Schoonmaker has his snaps almost completely taken by Brevin Spann.
Rotating Nathan Thomas and Terrence Steele until the injuries happened to Guyton.
Malik Davis takes over for Jaden Blue. Here on the kickoff team, we talk about the kickoff team giving up 261 yards. Shoddy immediately says on Monday, we're making personnel changes on the kickoff team. So you see it everywhere else. So where is the difference with Kenneth Murray?
I think it has gotta have something. Man, maybe I can get like a small, like equipment manager gig there. I need that incriminating evidence. I need some money. It's Christmas time, man. Bills are due.
It is beautiful tree, by the way. We continue to harp on the beautiful tree, but no, there's got to be a change made in that second level. You had mentioned that Overshown's probably the one you would bring back. I would look into Shamar James as well. I would be curious to see what Shamar James can do when he has competent play around him in the second level.
I was more talking about like starting level people.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Shamar's going to be like the starting like obviously, like I wouldn't be opposed to bringing back like a Reddy Stewart or those guys because I think Reddy Stewart's one of the few who like fit the Eberflus scheme, even though he did some god awful, terrible things against the Lions as well.
Yeah. I think with the second level, there's not a lot that you have to work with, and I think it was Foots he put out this morning like his updated list of draft needs, and he put linebacker 1, and then he did like corner, safety, and then he put linebacker again.
He's still tripping with running back. I love Foots, but we are not drafting a running back in the first round. I don't care if Jeremiah Love is there at 26 or whatever we are when we have the Packers pick. No.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. You
No.
hit on a guy in free agency this offseason, and I think you would be better off re-signing Javonte Williams and drafting anybody in the first round. And that's understanding that Javonte probably doesn't have a lot of mileage left on him. He probably only has a year or two.
I know Jaden Blue hasn't really worked out yet, but draft another guy day 3. I don't care.
Yeah,
draft them all. Draft 6 running backs day 3.
Look at Kyle Monungai. Look at Isaiah Pacheco. Look at LaQuint Allen, I think was day 3. I mean, there are guys out there that you can still find in day 3 that work out.
And look at the 2 first-round guys. Look at what Jonty and Omarion Hampton are doing. Not much. And they don't have the best offensive lines. I'm not going to act like they're in the perfect situations, but people were acting like these guys were scheme and line agnostic. Like they are going to be immediately step in and be top 5 running backs in the NFL. I don't think so, sir.
Yeah, Travion Henderson, the same conversation, even though he went early second. Granted, Travion's really starting to find his stride, I think, now that he's getting starting caliber, snaps, but that's neither here nor there. I just think back to the linebacker conversation, you're going to have to get you would have to get a veteran in the offseason, and I think you got to draft 2. I think you got to spend one of those first-round picks. Like CJ Allen, Sonny Styles. I think there are some fantastic candidates out there. I'm not as bullish on Anthony Hill as I once was. I think if you maybe traded out of that last first-round pick and got you a couple of picks on day 2, and you could pick Anthony Hill early second round, then I'm okay with that. But still, there's going to be some really good linebacker options in this draft. I think you got to take advantage of it. But we've mentioned Eberflus. I know your feelings there. Is there a reality where the Cowboys are going to have to change both coordinators when you talk about Nick Sorensen as well?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't done anything to really impress me either. So, and this is, if I'm not mistaken, his first year as a special teams coordinator, because he was the DC before.
So he was special teams coordinator in the Jacksonville Urban Meyer disaster with Brian Schottenheimer. Yeah,
great.
Exactly. And he was special teams with the Niners, if I remember correctly, and then he flipped over to DC, and that DC experiment did not work. He was fired midseason.
Yeah, I mean, I think special teams coordinators is one of the easier. It's probably the easiest coordinator gig to go out and find a guy who can really do a good job. There's a bunch of them, especially even if you want to go to the college ranks. Those guys are fiending to come up to the NFL ranks. So I think that's easy. I would say it is to find another special teams coordinator. The key is going to be finding a real defensive coordinator who not only fits the personnel, he has the ability to adjust his scheme based on the personnel. And he's not just going to be a stubborn, bearded fella who just – I don't know what he's doing.
He has a great beard.
A linebacker whisperer who has the worst linebacker unit I've ever seen in my life.
I think there was too much trust put into his linebacker evaluations this offseason. Because the Kenneth Murray edition, that's on him. That's not.
That should be a fireable offense in and of itself. Yeah. The fact that they traded for that dude. What in the world?
Yeah. I'm with you. You would hope that they retain White Cotton. I think there's things that White Cotton has really been able to help you with in that defensive front. Obviously, you have Quinnen Williams now, so you want to maximize White Cotton already. I think, could he be the DC? Probably not. But I hope you can get a guy that can come in that would be the secondary wizard, coverage wizard, that would be able to understand and play to these guys' strengths so that you can maximize what your back end is getting. Because in reality, Eberflus is not having to do a whole lot with his front. That's been proven by what White Cotton has done throughout his career. You go back to the Jets and what he's done there. You go back to earlier this season to now. You've seen what White Cotton's effect has been on the defensive front. Eberflus has had nothing to do with that for the grand scheme of things. So get you a guy that can get you a little bit more in the secondary and on the back end to complement what White Cotton has been able to do up front. I'm bullish on that too. I am with you. I don't think they'd do it. I don't think they do it. And that's going to be tough to talk about over the offseason is how are we going into 2026 expecting the same things?
This is going to be the most frustrating part of the spin cycle of the offseason is going to be how they're going to justify to keep Flus just based on continuity.
Yeah.
Just frustrating. And I got a guy that they can bring in. I got a guy, Jim Leonard, Denver Broncos, defensive passing game coordinator. Everybody you talk to that has come across him in their coaching career says this guy is like a mad hatter genius when it comes to defensive scheme and everything.
Yep.
Bring me that, please.
Yeah. Very quietly interviewed for the DC job when Mike Zimmer got hired. So There's a little bit of familiarity in the building with him. I think that would
More.
be fantastic. I would love Jim Leonhard. He's done great things at the college level, Baylor, Wisconsin, and he was always good to me when I was in those fields and in those days at my previous job. So I would love some Jim Leonhard as well. But there's a thought out there about Al Harris. Is he ready to be a DC? I don't think so. I don't think he's ready to call plays, but I do love.
He's more of a head coach than a defensive coordinator type.
I feel that.
Because his whole thing when he was here is he was not big on scheme, not big on scheme. He's more big on individual techniques. And that's not to say that he doesn't know scheme or that he can't coach scheme, but I want my defensive coordinator to be that schemer. I want that guy who can scheme up shit on the whiteboard constantly. He can come up with all types of different answers, blah, 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 blah. But I think Al Harris would be a great potential head coach of like motivating men, having the really, grand view of the team as a whole, motivating them, harping on individual techniques, when you see it, when you need it, that type of thing. I think he's one of those guys who could jump from like position coach to head coach and totally bypass the coordinator just based on what I have heard about his skill set as a coach.
Yeah. I'm curious of your opinion on this next topic, John, just because it's been the spotlight, and Richard Sherman put it under the microscope after the game on Thursday as George Pickens and his effort against the Lions. Going back on film, how much can you actually pull away from there being effort concerns versus what Pickens was trying to say is that the Lions just schemed him out of the game?
Yeah, and I think his effort in that game was the same as it's been in every other game. It's just that he was put in more situations where the effort would be, questionable. It's Pickens is who he is. When he's not the primary receiver or he's getting doubled or he's facing these bracket coverages, he's not going to be running 100 full speed routes. Yeah. He knows that he's occupying those two guys, so he's just going to do the bare minimum to be able to do that and hope that helps the rest of the offense. When he sees he has one-on-one man coverage or he's the primary receiver in the route concept, then you're going to get, the route manipulation, all the things that we see that he's so great. But I don't think it was any different than what we've seen throughout the entire year for him. Like I said, he was just put in situations more, and there was more of a microscope on it because the Cowboys weren't doing well. And because CeeDee Lamb did get knocked out of the game, it became under a microscope more. So it didn't worry me much. The things that worry me more are his like tardiness to meetings and stuff. If you hear the 105.3 guys talk about it constantly, it seems like it's a big issue. I think that's something that could erode a little bit of the locker room if let to, continue to metastasize throughout a year. Yeah. And that's the type of thing that when you get paid, it could get even worse type of thing. So that type of thing worries me a little bit more. The effort hasn't worried me because, in my opinion, like I said, it was the same as the rest of the year.
I will say that is the difference between 30 million and 36 potentially is those, off the field type things. But I think with this game specifically, there was so much put on, his effort and how it was, you saw it in the route running, you saw it on the deep field shot, like right before the 2-minute timeout or 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter. I think overall though, I'm with you, John. And let's say that there were effort issues. Let's pretend for that for a second. Has he not given you enough this season to where you can justify him having that opportunity or having that, one giveaway? I just, him being put under that intense of a microscope, I think had to do with it being a primetime game. Yeah, being, Richard Sherman having the comments immediately after, and that interception coming off of his chest, that first one. Mm-hmm. And I think if you don't have even one of those things, I think we're probably having a much different conversation right now. But I think, with George Pickens, he's still a top 5 receiver in this league. He's still going to be first, second team All-Pro this year. And if you are having any concerns coming out of that game, I think they're misjudged completely. And has the team had concerns behind the scenes? Yeah, I think they have. I think that is safe to say. And there's going to have to be some fascinating conversations had this offseason about if some of the minor headaches at this point, but could be major down the line, are worth it. And it's eerily similar to the Micah conversations from last year. I think the big difference here, though, is that there is a lot more teammate support for George Pickens, and so I wonder how that you say the word metastasizes. I wonder how that metastasizes for his contract talk next year. But overall, I mean, it's a one game. It was not a good game. And Shotty talked about it on Monday. He said he brought him in over the weekend to his office, and they talked a little bit about effort. And he told him, "Hey, Shotty, I didn't play my best game." And Shotty said, "Hey, none of us did." So it's a move on type
Did
situation.
Shoddy let him know that Richard Sherman was still really good for the 49ers too?
Yeah, that is true.
We all remember the 49ers. We all remember the 49ers. Like, yeah, he was still really good. He was still really good.
Finally I have turned on Pickens's Instagram notifications so that I don't miss these, because this is like the third time he's tweeted some crash out material and I miss it because he deletes it like an hour or two later. And so I now have the notifications on so I don't miss the next crash out moment. But I'll say last thing about Pickens, at least from my point, he has been a great dude in the locker room with us. And, when I talk to a lot of media people coming out of Pittsburgh, this was not what I expected. And so, I'll give it to him. He is, I think, at least from what we've been told versus what we have seen, there's been a step up in maturity. You would just hope that increases behind the scenes too, because it could be headed for a messy offseason if it doesn't.
If there's the one thing you want to worry about the offense, it's not Pickens. It's the goddamn pass protection and Dak Prescott needing to run for his life so much.
Yeah.
That's the issue. That is the issue. Nate Thomas getting his butt kicked is an issue. Terrence Steele getting his butt kicked is an issue. The inability to consistently pick up blitzes is an issue. Those are the issues, not George Pickens right now.
Let me ask you, let's say are you a big Caden Proctor fan? I don't know how much tape you've watched.
I have not watched him a bunch. Okay. No.
Okay. So let's just say you have a tackle you co-sign, right? Like this is a first round tackle you like. Let's say it's like Membu. All right. You have Membu on the table at like 12, and you have a Sonny Styles or a CJ Allen on the table at 12. Where are you going?
This is where the things that I think when we get in the draft time, we'll be able to get into this a little bit more in depth, but kind of like the 1,000-foot view. You can't it's just hard to consistently invest that many first round picks into your offensive line that often. You have to invest it elsewhere, and you have to find other means to stitch together your offensive line, in my opinion. Like second rounders, third rounders, you have to hit on those. Use free agency, get a vet, those type of things. And also, this team needs a goddamn linebacker, and I love Sonny. I love Sonny Styles, Nick. He's my guy. I'm not saying he's him. But I get Fred Warner. I get the same vibes watching Sonny Styles as I got watching Fred Warner when I was down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
That is what I like. Oh, just the sideline, not missing tackles, his awareness and coverage. I love Sonny Styles, man. I think he was fantastic to put in combination with DeMarvion Overshown. Woo!
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that, because Overshown was a converted safety going into college. When I covered Sonny Styles as a recruit, high school recruit, he was a safety. I mean, it was always with the idea that he was going to come down at the college.
He's not that small of a linebacker. He's like 6'4", 240 or something like that.
Certainly has the frame. And I think like in a high school environment that can make more sense on the back end, but at Ohio State that makes more sense in the second level, and he's been an absolute monster. So you would go with Styles in that situation if it's like a Styles,
especially with the interior defensive lineman that the Cowboys have, because Styles will have some times where he'll get stuck on blocks, but when you're playing behind Quinnen Williams, Osa Odighizuwa, and Big Kenny Clark, you're going to have a lot more freedom than you would have on your typical team in that interior gap situation. So plugging in Sonny Styles as the Mike, DeMarvion Overshown as the Will, let's roll, baby.
Yeah, that would be badass. Playoffs. We have to talk about it because the Eagles lost last night. John. I don't know if you saw, but not too far from you there in Sacramento, down in LA. The Chargers took down the 5 turnover Jalen Hurts Eagles team. Man, it is left the door cracked for the Cowboys playoff hopes. And I kind of mapped it out on Twitter, but I'll map it out a little bit more here. So if the Cowboys win out, first off, the Cowboys have to win out here in this scenario. There are scenarios where they lose one more and they find a way in, but they need to win out. If they win out, they have a 54% chance of making the playoffs right off rip, according to the Athletics playoff simulator. What they would need to happen is the Eagles would have to lose 2. The Eagles' remaining schedule, home against the Raiders. They have 2 games against the Commanders, and they travel to Buffalo in the middle of those Commanders games.
They lose to the Raiders. Oh.
Man.
Even if the Cowboys don't make the playoffs, man, I will just enjoy that like it's a Honeycrisp apple. Just buy it and just savor it. Oh, that would be amazing.
So let's say that the Eagles take care of business. Let's say that they win 3 of their final 4 games and they take care of business, and that's not the path for the Cowboys to get in. They would need 2 of Detroit, San Francisco, Chicago, Green Bay, Seattle to crash and burn. I think the most realistic option there is San Francisco and Detroit. Chicago's also kind of an interesting factor in the middle of all that. They all kind of play each other. Niners have a really tough final 4 games. But even if so, let's say the Cowboys win their remaining 4 games and the Eagles take care of business, their odds drop down to 26%. So it's basically a 1-4 at that shot of hoping that 2 of these teams crash and burn. Not winning that game against Detroit really killed your wild card odds. Like the best path is the division.
Man, if the Cowboys would have won that game, we would be sitting pretty right now. I would be feeling so confident right now about making the playoffs, given the way everything looks. Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's tough. They needed that one, and they not getting it done. I don't think zapped the energy out of that locker room when it came to playoff hopes, but it certainly impacted it. And so you wonder. I'm curious to go into the locker room tomorrow. It'll be our first time back in since the Eagles loss. I'm curious to see what the vibe is after that Eagles loss and saying that that there is still a chance. So we'll see. They are certainly keeping an eye on the Eagles schedule. Wanye Thomas had a series of funny tweets last night during the Eagles Chargers game, just about him watching it. But gun to your head, John, does this team make the playoffs?
No.
Yeah, I'm with you. I honestly think the Eagles lose 2 more down the stretch. I do. Like, they are not playing well. It feels very reminiscent of the 2023 slide that they had. I don't see the Cowboys handling business. I don't see them.
Radio hosts in Philly are living large right now. I tell you that much.
Mind.
Dude, the call lines are just lighting up right now. I already know.
Yeah.
I already know. Those guys love. Chocolate hats. Put in Tanner McKee.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. And so I just don't see the Cowboys winning the final 4 games. Even though they should be favored in all 4 of these, I think they get tripped up at least once. They haven't had a 4-game winning streak all season. I don't think it happens, now. But, for business purposes, I would love to be wrong. Let's go into this fan chat. We got some everybody tuning in, so appreciate it. What's up, P the Free? What's really good? What is really good, John? What's really good these days?
The fact that I can finally train without dying of sickness. That's great.
That is fantastic. I'm happy to hear that.
This Christmas tree.
That is a great Christmas tree.
That I did all by myself.
I hope she hears it. Let's see. You think Logan was just not getting a chance because Murray is Fluce's boy, or is Logan lacking something? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. I don't want to theorize. John, do you have an answer there?
He's definitely got a little bit of the Sanborn in that he's not that great of an athlete and he can be exposed in man coverage, but Kenneth Murray is exposed literally everywhere.
Yeah, I was going to say he's better than Murray.
At least Logan Wilson, he goes to the right gap and he plays downhill and he doesn't wait for blocks to come and, escort him to the sideline. It's like, I will take the slower player. What I think was with Kenneth Murray is that Monday through Saturday, like without pads on, the dude just looks like fucking like Fred Warner out there. Yeah. When you're not allowed to really block or not allowed to really tackle, he's probably flying around. He probably have like his speed numbers. Like, he's the fastest guy on defense outside of Deron Bland, blah, 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 blah. Do you see his mile per hour numbers? Do you see his GPS numbers? They're so impressive until he has to process anything, and then he's slower than me and you.
Yeah, I don't know how much you guys use it in terms of like draft talk or whatever else in the recruiting world. Whenever we would go to a camp or we would go to like an All-American Bowl or something like that, the day before that they would start practices, they would come through the lobby and we'd interview them or whatever, and we have an all-lobby team. And the all-lobby team is basically like who looks fantastic, who looks like they belong. Kenneth Murray is like first team all-lobby. Oh, yeah. Like, absolutely. I'm with you 100%. He is first team all-lobby. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily translate when the pads get put on and the lights come out. But this is an interesting one, and I can't remember if we've talked about this, John, so apologies if we have. Quincy Williams is a fascinating one because I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion that he ends up on this roster next year if the front office agrees to it. His contract is running up with the Jets. He's going to be a free agent this offseason. They have taken him out of a starting role. He doesn't seem to be too thrilled about it. And then obviously his brother Quinnen Williams is now here. What do you think about Quincy Williams, the player?
I haven't watched him much this year, but I remember watching him in the past because I believe he was a free agent maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. Or he was coming up on free agency, something. I was watching him a year or two ago for some reason. And I was impressed. It's like breaking a broken record, but he plays much better than Kenneth Murray. He gets downhill. He understands. He does a little bit of a good job getting off blocks. Like I said, he plays downhill. I don't think he's the best in coverage or anything, but big upgrade over Big Murray. I tell you that much.
Yeah.
Over Mr. All hallway team, or what did you call it?
All lobby
team. Yeah. All lobby team. First team off the bus.
They have a couple all lobby guys that just don't necessarily translate on the field. I think we talked a little bit about it with Smalls HG saying who would have to become available for them to consider moving on from Flus.
Jim Leonard.
Go ahead.
Jim Leonard.
Yeah, Jim Leonard would be fantastic. I'm trying to think of guys that they have
would be interesting is like has a relationship with the Joneses and everything. Wade Phillips. That's not a terrible name, in my opinion. He's someone who's really good. I mean, yes, he is. He is old, but like I like his scheme. I like the way he runs his fronts. I like he's known for being very simplistic on the back end, but he plays a lot of man. He plays tight. He understands how another thing that I forgot to mention with the defense that I think is a really good point is since the Quinnen Williams trade, the Cowboys are one of the best teams in the NFL at generating pressure.
Yeah.
But they're generating pressure, but you're not seeing the results coincide with it in terms of sacks, in terms of hurting the opposing quarterbacks, adjusting completion percentage and that. And it's because their coverages are so soft and giving so many easy receptions that when quarterbacks drop back and they have pressure in their face, they can find the outlet so fucking easily.
Yeah.
So easily. So it's making things like not only are you making it easy for the opposing offense, you're nullifying what your defense is actually doing well.
Yeah.
So it's just so frustrating. And Wade Phillips is the king of if you're getting pressure, he understands how to play on the back end to maximize that at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, gosh, imagine if you had Dan Quinn with this personnel. I think it would be drastically different. And there is no way that front office doesn't think about that. Not necessarily Dan Quinn, but the idea of Dan Quinn, and an aggressive defensive coordinator who is okay with his guys playing man and playing press. One thing that we didn't touch on the defense that I definitely do want to talk about is Savone Revel. Obviously did not have his best game. He just didn't look comfortable. Why. Yeah, he didn't look comfortable. What was your evaluation there?
I mean, Joe Hoyt it was really great timing. He came out with an interview with article talking about him, about how Savone Revel really hasn't played much of this vision zone-based defense in the past. He was playing more press man, more match zone, tighter coverages, playing that side saddle cover 3 when he's in zone. So instead of, backpedaling, turning and running like we saw him stumble and fall, he's playing from a side saddle like the Saban style what the cornerbacks do. And that makes it very easy to either turn and run or stop and come forward to, stop route or something like that. So he's just not used to this type of thing. And he's another one who he's backpedaling up way too much throughout the stem, and it's putting him in poor position to defend these short to intermediate breaking routes. And it's just, he is the epitome. Him and Diggs really are the two epitomes of, if you're talking about one particular players who their skill sets just do not fit the style of defense that Eberflus plays, it's those two.
Yeah. One DC option I just want to throw for shits and giggles.
Hear it.
Pete Carroll gets fired in Vegas. You in?
Yeah.
Hey, man, I don't think that's as far.
A cover 1, cover 3 guy who's gonna play press. He's gonna play press bail. He's started to play a little bit more of that match quarters system from the Saban tree a little bit as he's aged, and teams have been so good at defeating that Seattle Seahawks cover 3 because it was becoming like the de jour coverage of the entire NFL for like that decade after the Legion of Boom. And he's shown the ability to adjust to personnel. And I would like that. I mean, the Raiders are just a complete black hole right now. Pun
Yeah,
intended.
it seems like the fans are turning on him too.
Yeah.
I wonder.
I'm not opposed to it. I don't think he would take the ego hit to become a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, especially as like his former guy that he fired.
Mhm. I
Um,
would look at, I don't know particular names, but I'd be looking at people that were, coaching under Mike McDonald, those type of guys. These guys that have spent time in college where you have to adjust your scheme to the personnel consistently because you're getting new personnel every single year, and there's such a big change from the personnel from year to year, so you have to be able to adjust. Those type of guys.
T-Jack says, I'm taking the linebacker as of now. He also says Vegas beating Philly would be an early Christmas present, and that would be crazy. That'd be wild. Small safety. I think whoever makes it in between Philly and Dallas both get bounced first round. I mean, I'll say this about the Cowboys. If they win their final 4 games, that means that they have found a spark and that they'd be heading into the playoffs likely with the home game, assuming that they would win the division. But again, yeah, they'd be taking on the Niners or the Packers or the Lions. And man, I almost would say that not making the playoffs would be the much better scenario than dropping a wild card game to one of those teams. Yeah. But M. Lennox, guys, if Sonny Styles isn't there in the first, which I'll be right with CJ Allen, love him as a Mike linebacker. I don't know how much John has watched CJ Allen. I love CJ Allen. I think he's an MFer. Yeah, he's an MFer, and he would be awesome. I don't really have a ranking between the two yet. I'm not really diving into that until the season really ends. Mm-hmm. But I love both of these guys for sure as potential first-round options as of today.
Yeah, not getting into any definitive grades, obviously, right now, but I would say based on what I've seen, a couple games of both, I prefer Styles over Allen, but I would totally be fine with Allen. I saw really good keying, diagnosed, plays through blocks really well. Really good against the run. I'll take him.
Question here, Aiden Dirty. I would say no, because you'd be doubling up on what you already have with Aaron Whitecotton, and I think Aaron Whitecotton is better fit for the guys you have in the room right now than Dirty would be. I don't know. That's just me saying. I don't think you could bring in Dirty and assume to keep Whitecotton. You'd be kind of like overlapping their responsibilities because Dirty is a front guy. You would need a secondary guy in my eyes. And Solid Duck, yeah, get the Adams for the defense. Well, the thing about Adams is he doesn't call the plays, and I think from a scheme standpoint, I think, from a run scheme standpoint, he has really been transformational for this offense, and it's allowed them to work with as much efficiency as they have. But you would need to find a guy who can also call the plays on the defensive side. That's going to be the tough task, and call the coverage. That's going to be the tough task in finding, because I don't know if there's going to be that guy this year. I don't know if there's going to be that Robert Saleh put on the job market or the Dan Quinn put on the job market. I don't think that guy gets put out there, but I could be wrong. We'll see. And shout out to producer Caden hopping in. Expectations for Diggs on Sunday. 25 snaps. Like I said, this was kind of what I expected if he had played against Detroit, but that's kind of what I'm looking at is probably like 25 snaps. And, it gives Revel a little bit more freedom because I think not having Diggs in that game, it didn't make a huge impact, but I think it affected the way that they, played Revel, how much they played Revel. And, you wish that Revel's confidence didn't get kicked as much as it did. But we will see, man. We will see. And Drew Santana, Murray getting juked out by Gibbs in open field almost looked fake. John, when that happened, I almost called you. I almost called you.
Losing it.
Man, so that was in the first drive.
Yeah, what?
That was in the first drive.
Mm-hmm.
They generated all that pressure in the first drive off of those blitzes and then did not blitz nearly as much the back.
Yeah, and it's all because Kenneth Murray, almost every big play on that drive was because Kenneth Murray was playing, with his head in the grass.
That is the biggest indictment on Murray in my eyes, because you do that because you're worried about the leakage coming out of the backfield and Jahmyr Gibbs, right? That means you don't have a guy that you trust in covering him. Now, granted, there's not many linebackers in the league that can cover Gibbs, but to the point to where you only blitz 5 more times in the following 29 dropbacks, you only generate, 4 pressures in the final 29 dropbacks after generating 4 on the first 6. That's the biggest indictment on Murray right there, is that they are showing that they're not trusting him by completely changing their blitz packages after that first drive. It's just, that confuses me.
In the past, when the Cowboys would go against this type of running back, what would they do? They would man him up with Jordan Lewis. Do you think that Eberflus has that kind of creativity to take a slot cornerback and make him like a pseudo linebacker and make him basically shadow a running back in the passing game constantly. I don't think he has that creativity, but it's something that the Cowboys did in the past that had a ton of success, and it's something that you should have copied. But no, we're gonna let this non-tackling, non-processing linebacker do it for fun, shits and gigs.
Yeah, it is frustrating, and I think it's something that's going to have to be addressed in the offseason, no doubt. But you hope it gets addressed before then. You hope a Logan Wilson starts taking over completely what the snaps have been looking like for Kenneth Murray, just because I think it's time. It's been past time, way past time. And from a communication standpoint, Overshown's ready. Throw him out there. Let him be the green dot. There's been plenty of snaps where Overshown has been the guy that they've called plays into. So, let that be the natural transition. But, John, that was a good episode, man. I know we don't necessarily have a sumo update, but we did have UFC this last weekend.
Yeah, fun. It was fun until we saw a dude's dislocated shoulder trying to land on my man Pantoja. That was unfortunate, but Peter Yan, whoo, yeah. What a masterful performance by him. It was great to see. I thought it was overall a really fun night of fights. I enjoyed it, even though I was sick as a dog watching them. Yeah, but it was good.
Shout out to Joshua Van. That is how you pronounce it, Joshua Van. Yes, Houston Waltrip High School, first Asian-born UFC champion, and he's a Texan. So shout out to Joshua Van. So, man, we will be back later in the week to talk about this Vikings matchup, because I think there's some scary things about this Vikings offense that
Brian Flores. Be afraid of the Brian Flores defense.
And you beat me to it
everywhere.
You beat me to it.
Wide receiver screen against Van Geekel.
Yeah. We're going to talk a lot more about these tackles and the concerns we have around these tackles going into this game. You expect to get Tyler Guyton back, I will say that, but there's going to be a lot of concerns about what exactly the Cowboys can do to protect Dak Prescott in this game. But we will be back later this week to talk about it. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. Smalls HD, Drew Santana. Shout out to Caden for hopping in the chat and setting this up. Solid Duck, Sweet Zeke, T-Jack, P the Free, everybody. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time. Be easy.
Later.